Hello everyone, I'm Betty. Today we will talk about the Program of Studies of Chinese Language and Culture. In this video, we will focus on three elements. 1. Program of Studies. 2. How I connect POS with modern theories of language teaching and evaluation. 3. My typical classes. To access the POS of this course, first go to this page of Alberta Education. Then you may scroll down and select the following document. The aim of the Program of Studies is to develop students' communicative competence in Chinese. The four components of the POS are applications, language competence, global citizenship, and strategies. Four components of the POS. Applications deal with what the students will be able to do with the language in different contexts. Language competence addresses the students' knowledge of the language and their ability to use it. Global citizenship aims to develop intercultural competence. In this case, we'll focus on Chinese culture. Strategies help students learn and communicate more effectively and more efficiently even outside of the language learning context. The spiral progression of the POS conceptualizes how the activities in the years preceding will prepare for the acquisition in the years following with broadened applications. The POS mainly elaborates on the four main components. First, it lists the general outcomes. Then it goes into more details of each outcome. It displays the detailed outcomes of each main component in a spider map. Here is the elaboration of the main component, application. So we've got A1 to receive and impart information. And then comes the detailed outcome of A1, which is share factual information. And then on the right hand side, under grade 6, since now we're looking at grade 6, you'll find an elaboration of A1.1. Here is what students will learn in this course over the year. As for applications, students will be able to conduct short conversations in Chinese to gather or share a variety of information. Students will be able to use the language for personal enjoyment and aesthetic purposes. In terms of language competence, students can apply intonation and stress in the right manner. Students will acquire vocabularies in different fields. Students will be able to apply different basic adjectives and adverbs. For the details of adjectives and adverbs, please see page 16 to 18 in the POS. In terms of global citizenship, students will be able to identify similarities and differences between their own culture and Chinese culture. Students will also explore how the perspectives are socially constructed. Students will be able to identify places that they could visit or work where Chinese is spoken, thus increase their career opportunities. In terms of strategies, students will identify and use a variety of strategies to enhance their general learning. The Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, CEFA, is an international standard for describing language ability. It describes language ability on a 6-point scale, from A1 for beginners up to C2 for those who have mastered a language. For a 3-year language program, the majority of the students are expected to master A1 basic user level. A few outstanding students may be able to reach A2 by the end of the program. Here is a detailed description of A1 level. For more information about the CEFA standards, please refer to the following chart at linguistichorizon.com. In my classroom, I will assign meaningful tasks for students. This is task-based language teaching. For example, assigning students to order Chinese food on the phone, reserve a table in a Chinese restaurant, volunteer in a Chinese elderly care center, and have conversations with the elderly. Students are expected to use the target language, Chinese, to complete all these tasks. The assessments of TBLT are mainly based on the completion of the tasks rather than on language accuracy, because TBLT focuses more on helping students to enhance fluency and confidence in using the language. Moreover, I will implement portfolio-based language assessment in my teaching. Unlike traditional teaching practices, in particular use of standardized tests at the end of the term, PBLA provides multiple assessment opportunities for students to reflect on their learning. In my lessons, I will assign multiple formative assessments, such as quizzes, projects, and tasks, to keep students on track, allow students to record and reflect on their learning processes. More importantly, these assessments will allow me to adapt my teaching plans according to students' proficiency, needs, and interest. In my typical classes, I will start with teaching some simple lexicons. I will ensure that these lexicons are within similar topics so they appear more logical and coherent for students and thus will improve their learning. Then, I'll demonstrate how to use these lexicons in a simple sentence. I will ask students to repeat after me, then practice it with their peers. After students master those simple conversations, I will teach some common phrases which include the vocabularies that students just learned. Then I'll demonstrate how to use those phrases in a sentence and have students to practice the sentences with their peers. Eventually, I will connect the simple sentences and more complicated sentences into a conversation. So now students understand each sentence. By scaffolding vocabularies, phrases, then sentences, students are very likely to be able to carry out the conversation with their peers successfully. I always make sure that I apply scaffolding in my teaching, which means I'll build up students' knowledge based on their previous knowledge, and I will always make sure that the knowledge being taught is within students' zone of proximal development. Within zone of proximal development, students will be able to learn the materials with proper guidance. Moreover, I'll make sure what's been taught can be structured into a coherent conversation. To explain this idea, I would like to use the water drop models again. For example, moreover, I will make sure what's been taught can be structured into a coherent conversation. To explain this idea, I would like to use the water drop model again. For example, when I'm teaching about location, I will first teach some simple lexicons, such as swimming pool, school, bookstore, etc. Then I'll teach a simple sentence structure like where is in Chinese. In this way, students can apply those simple lexicons they've learned in a practical and meaningful conversation. After that, I will teach about direction and preposition, such as behind, in front of, etc. Then I will teach how to describe the location of a place. By putting places and directions together does not only help students to remember the materials better, also I'm scaffolding the materials and so students are more likely to be able to put them into real-life practices. I will provide multiple opportunities for students to practice what they've learned in different ways. For example, oral repetition, repeat after me orally. Visual presentation, draw or write what's been taught. Kinesthetic activities, learning through physical activities rather than simply listening and watching. By creating different ways for students to practice their learning, it appeals to learners with different learning intelligences. Here are my approaches to specific elements when teaching a second language. For grammar, I provide students with a set of example sentences that guide them to figure out the rule that they are learning. Again, I'll ensure that the grammatical rule that students are expected to find out will be within the zone of proximal development. As for pronunciation, I'll use Chinese as much as possible when I'm instructing, so that students are more likely to get use of the intonation and pronunciation of the target language. Moreover, I'll encourage students to ask and answer questions in Chinese so that they get to practice more with their pronunciations. However, in communicative activities, such as practicing a dialogue with a partner, I will focus more on the fluency rather than accuracy, so that students get to enhance their confidence in using that target language. When teaching new vocabularies, I'll focus more on accuracy, the correct pronunciation, and intonation. I'll show students how each vocabulary is used in a sentence. With a concrete context, the new vocabulary is more likely to register in students' mind because the students now know when and how to use the new vocabularies. I will implement cultural elements by teaching students common Chinese etiquette, customs, and traditional festivals. Moreover, I will assign some practical tasks, such as asking students to research on the type of food that they're interested in, having students dine in a Chinese restaurant and report their favorite food in class. I will remind my students that they can apply the language strategies in Chinese class to their general learning. For example, when I teach students a new vocabulary, I often show them how this vocabulary is used in different sentences. This strategy of understanding new materials by putting them in different contexts can be useful in other subject areas as well. I'll provide several means of evaluation which allow students to exhibit their learning with authenticity. For example, I'll allow students to exhibit their learning by giving an oral presentation, creating a video, or writing a report. In order to assess fairly, I will limit the means of evaluation, which means I will only provide limited options to students. Also, I'll provide the rubric for each mean of assessment before students submit or present their works. As I believe that a homogeneous world will never be as beautiful and colorful as a world with diversity, I will integrate open-mindedness and respect for different cultures in my teaching by being open-minded to students' opinions and respect all individuals. Also, I'll educate students to think critically by introducing a culture that might be very different from theirs. Thus, students are likely to become more aware of their surroundings and the social factors that influence their perceptions.